Hi, babes. Welcome to Madre Nova. This is Morales, your host, and this is our little corner, a space to breathe, a space to heal, and a space to be honest. So, grab your cafecito, sit next to me, and let's talk about it. Hi, babes. You made it. Welcome to Madre Nova, a mother sanctuary. Again, this is your host, Morales. And before we dive into our very first episode of season one, I do want to say Happy New Year. I am so proud of you. So proud of you. I know that a lot of us walked into 2026 feeling hopeful, others very tired, and others still carrying things from 2025. But regardless of what you came into 2026 looking like, I'm proud of you because you're here and that's what matters. So, you know, 2025 was a roller coaster. It was a not so kind year. I don't want to say it was a bad year because, again, we have to be grateful for the blessings and the lessons that we learned for 2025. However, let's make 2026 a memorable year, guys. Whatever situation that you're in, trust and believe that God is going to carry you through. He carried you through 2025 and you're here. So you still have a purpose, you still have an assignment. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let us not allow ourselves to succumb to what society wants us to do or what the enemy wants us to do. Let's go in with God and end with God and continue the next year the same. Okay? All right. I know that clocked that. But yes, guys, I'm so excited because this is season one, episode one of the journey to motherhood. Yes, guys, this is my testimony episode, and I'm so excited to share with you guys uh, what it looked like for me to become a mother. And for those who know me personally, you guys know that it was a very long um, journey to motherhood. And I think that the reason why I'm sharing with you guys is because, again, this sanctuary or this safe space was made so that I can be able to be raw and honest with you guys because I know that there's people watching, a lot of moms, a lot of women who are watching who need to hear what this journey looked like for me because it wasn't a perfect journey. And it wasn't just like, oh, I fell back, had a baby, No, it wasn't like that. It was very much like behind the scenes, like tears. I'm talking about snot and tears, very much doubting my faith. So this episode is very much my testimony, but I'm not going to keep you guys long. Let's start right away. I think for a lot of us, I don't want to generalize because this might look different for every mom or every woman, but I think that for the majority of us, motherhood is something that is in the back of our heads, right? Like we always dream of having a family, whether it be with one kid, whether it be with two kids, three kids, whatever the size of the family you want is something that we kind of dreamed of ever since we were very young. So my whole life I've known that I wanted to be a mom. Like I loved and still love kids very much. And I think that I always imagined myself as a mom. Like there was no area or certain time frame where I wasn't thinking about what would I look like as a mom? What would my family look like? How many kids am I going to have? So infertility infertility wasn't something that I was thinking about. Like I knew what the word infertility meant. However, I didn't know how deep infertility was or that in a certain point in my life it was going to affect me the way that it did. And yeah, it's never crossed my mind. I mean, I remember that before I got with my now husband, I was in a very abusive relationship and in within that relationship, I was very manipulated. I was very young. I was very young and I was with someone who was way older than me. But, that would be something for another day. However, what I'm trying to get is that still within that relationship, I still had dreams of being a mom. And I didn't realize at that time, like, that I was going through infertility. I mean, I was very young. I didn't understand that. And I just thought, oh, well, it's not happening because of whatever other reason. Again, I'm not thinking about infertility. I was on birth control as well. So that really it didn't connect. Like the dots didn't connect about that. So once I got with my husband and we started trying, I remember that we started trying naturally in the natural way. And I think it was like up to 6 months, nothing was happening. So, you start to get a little worried because at this time I was off of birth control. And again, we just don't have, as growing up, we don't have enough information of what birth control can do to you. Now we have more resources, thank God. But before, you know, in a Hispanic Caribbean community, like infertility and birth control, those are things that are not really talked about. Those are your kind of controversial topics. And again, I didn't know, I had no knowledge. So once I got off birth control, I thought it was just like, okay, I'm off birth control. I can get pregnant right away. That was it. That was my idea. So as we were trying, first month goes by, nothing happens. Second month goes by, nothing happens. Third month goes by, nothing happens. And I'm talking about 6, 7 months go by, and I'm just like, oh, is there another way that this is supposed to happen? Because to my understanding, this only happens one way. And we're not going to get into the details of that because that is TMI. But um, that's when I decided to go into like a OBGYN or to like a doctor to see what was happening. So boom, here I am going into OBGYN asking, "Hey, guys, I tried to do the deed and it's not working. What is going on?" And basically, they just told me it can take up to a year. A plain, simple answer. There was nothing to it. There was no talk about, again, infertility, about any other hormonal imbalance, uh, nothing. It was just like, it can take up to a year. That didn't help my anxiety, but doctors knows best, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm just a regular person. So I take the advice and we continue to try. We keep trying, we keep trying. And every time a month goes by, here comes a negative test. And another, and another, and another, and another. But we kept trying because the doctor said it can take up to a year. So who are we to challenge what, you know, the doctor is saying? We're not medical professionals and they went to school for that. So within that year, we're just, staying hopeful. Like, the doctor said this, the doctor said that. And we kept trying. A year goes by, nothing. I go back. I actually switched doctors because I realized that the first doctor was brushing off my concerns about not being able to conceive. So I go to another doctor. And I want to remind you guys that at this time, I was not living where I am living now. I was actually living in Connecticut. So when I went to the second doctor, her name is Dr. Dingra. She is, I mean, I have no words to explain Dr. Dingra. She was a lifesaver. Like that woman is a great example of a doctor who actually cares about women's health and actually takes your concerns into consideration. So if Dr. Dingra, you're ever looking at this one day, thank you so much for everything that you have done for me, for the diagnosis, for just everything. People like you in the medical field, especially for women and reproductive services, deserve, I don't know, like the best of the world because, going into the office with Dr. Dingra and just seeing how she was taking on my concerns in and just notating everything and saying this is what we're going to do, offering solutions. It gave me a sense of peace. It gave me a sense of, hope. Like, yes, this can work. Let's see what's going to happen. And lo and behold, once we start doing testing, it comes out that I have PCOS. And if you don't know what PCOS is, PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. So that means that you have polyps in your ovaries. And again, I didn't know what PCOS was. My family never spoke about infertility, never spoke about anything wrong reproductive wise. So here I am, I'm like, what is PCOS? And, she sat down with me and she explained it to me. And she basically told me that PCOS is a hormonal imbalance, that it causes weight gain, it causes infertility, um, it causes excess facial hair growth. So PCOS can look very different to different types of women. It doesn't affect women the same. For me, it was very much like struggling to get pregnant and the weight gain. I like my weight gain is something that is always fluctuating. Like the same way that I can lose 10 pounds is the same way I can gain 15 and stay plateaued and not be able to lose not 1 pound of fat. And it also affects your insulin. So insulin resistance. I mean, there's so much that goes into PCOS. And I'm hoping that somewhere in the future with our podcast, we're able to invite a professional who has expertise in hormonal imbalances and reproductive services that can come in and just sit with you guys and sit with me to be able to explain these things in more depth for your information, and that you can find some comfortable space where you can go to your professional doctor and talk to them about things that are going on. So once I was diagnosed with PCOS, I mean, Dr. Dingra, she was just all hands on deck. She said, listen, PCOS PCOS is not a definite answer of you cannot absolutely get pregnant. You could, but it is going to take some time. For some people, it takes a little faster. Some people, it can take years to get pregnant because of, the hormone imbalance. In order for you to get pregnant, all your hormones have to be aligned so that a pregnancy can occur. So I was like, okay, so what are my solutions? And she basically said, well, we can start medication. Based on my diagnosis, I had PCOS, plus I was not ovulating on my own. So I can't ovulate on my own. I forget what the term is called, but what she had offered was we can start doing medications. So cycle ovulation induction. So basically, she gives you some medication. The one that she gave me first was called Clomid. Um, and she said you had to take this medication for a certain period of time to induce ovulation. You have to have sexual intercourse on specific days. And then from there, we wait to see if pregnancy happens. So it's very timed, very structured type of treatment. And that's what I started with. So once I started taking the medication, I was going in every 2 or 3 days or so to see if the eggs in my ovaries were growing, because that would have meant, like, the medication's working. And then she was able to give me a certain date or expected date where I should have timed intercourse and then eventually lead to pregnancy. So yeah, we did that. And I mean, we did it all. I remember the first cycle was unsuccessful. And then we did a second cycle, the same medication, same thing, timed intercourse, monitoring, going into the office, checking to see if the follicles were growing. And at one part, there was 2 cycles or so that I was ovulating, but it was not resulting in pregnancy. So we did it all. We did different types of We did combination medications, Clomid and Letrozole. That's another medication. I mean, I was hyper ovulating, guys. Yeah. And time after time passed and nothing, absolutely nothing happened. So at this point, I'm starting to lose faith, lose hope, because, you would think that, okay, they're giving you this solution, and you have your hopes up, like, oh my God, this is going to work. Yes, we're finally going to have a baby. But no, I didn't, unfortunately. And that went on for quite a while. So the second step of it was, she told me, okay, we've tried all the medications, we tried all the treatments, nothing's happening. We have to send you to a specialist. Here we go. I was sent to a specialist, quote unquote, one of the best hospitals for reproductive services in CT, which I'm not going to say names because my experience was not a good one. Yeah. Once we had found out that the medications and the treatment wasn't working, she then she then wanted to check like inside my uterus to make sure that everything was okay. That was the next step before she sent me to a specialist. So I remember that, once she checked into my uterus, she did find that I had polyps. So polyps are little masses of like skin and stuff like that and tissue that grow into your uterus. And depending where those polyps are placed in your uterus, it can either determine whether you need surgery or whether you don't. So for me, it meant that where the polyps were placed, I needed to get them removed because it was going to cause an issue for me conceiving and carrying a baby. That's, we go in, she scheduled the surgery, I went in, surgery went great. They removed, I would say, three or four. I don't really remember because it was probably like what, like 2 years ago now. So yeah, so they removed the polyps. Everything was great. She made sure to clean everything out. It looked all nice. She sent me the picture. And then after that, I believe that we did one more cycle and it still didn't work. So that's when I was sent to a specialist. I believe it was like a month after. I remember that I had my polyp removal surgery. I think it was January. And right after, a month after, I was sent to the center. And to kind of back up what I was saying, that the center was not a good experience. I remember walking into the center and it was just, when you walk into a place and you just kind of feel like you're out of place, like you don't really belong there. And I'm not saying that anybody said anything to me, but like, energy never lies. I've always said this: energy never lies. You can tell where you're not really welcomed, I would say. And so for me, I think that experience was like, I was the youngest person on the team that I had, because they give you a team of like nurses, a doctor, and everybody else that works within, reproductive services. They give you a certain team that you work with. So for my team, I was the youngest patient at that time. So I felt like the doctor that I had, again, I'm gonna withhold names because, you know, but she was very dismissive. So were the people from the center. I'm talking about all the way from, the actual doctor that I had down to like the people in the reception. Like every time that I would walk in, it was just like, I remember there was this one girl who she always had like this very like, how can I explain it? Like she was just so like you would wonder after, like, what is wrong with this person? Like, girl, if you don't want to work here, you don't have to. Like, it's not a obligation to be here. That's the kind of vibe she was giving me off. And then there was this other lady as well. She was an older lady. That girl, she just, listen, her job was to, collect co-pays, or if you had any balance dues. I get that. That's your job. That's what you're there for. But the way that she went about it, it was like, girl, like, give me a second. Like, she was just so, ugh, like, anyways. But yeah, like I felt very dismissed. I remember that while I was at the center, we then did the same thing. We did a lot of cycles, and we actually did a test that was kind of similar to what my OBGYN had done. And it's called, I think it's called a histogram. I might be wrong because, again, this was long ago. It's where they put like a dye in your uterus, and with like an x-ray machine, they can see inside the uterus and they can see if there's anything wrong with it. And I remember that at that time when I went to get that test done, they didn't find anything. She didn't find anything. And I was like, okay, well, this is good news. That means, my uterus is clean. If I were to start medication again and if I were to get pregnant, it's going to be successful, because that's what she made it feel like. So, once we got that test done, we went into, let's do a cycle. Again, we did Clomid, we did letrozole. I was going in like every 2-3 days to get monitored to make sure that my follicles were growing, the whole nine. And every time I went, I can say that if I'm not mistaken, I must have gone for like almost 2 months to that center. And in those 2 months that I went, I've only seen this doctor twice. One time it was in person, and the second time, which was the last time, it was on video. And I go back to my OBGYN because, I was sent to a specialist. They said that they were going to do this. They said they were going to do that. So I wanted to follow up with her. And I just told her, like, listen, you know, these people are not doing anything. These people are not helping me. Every time that I raise a concern, it's always being very cold, very dismissive. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm not being heard with the questions that I have. Because again, I'm very new to this. I'm young. I have no knowledge of what they're doing, how this is going to affect me, aside from what my OBGYN is telling me. And at this point, I was already referred to a specialist. So you would think that as a person who's a specialist in reproductive services, that they will sit with you and they would literally explain the whole entire process. But that didn't happen, apparently. So yeah, I had to go to my OBGYN. And she was a little infuriated because again, I was her patient. So she's like, okay, well, you need to advocate for yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I remember that I had sent a message to the doctor on the health portals that you can send messages directly to your doctor and whatnot. So I sent her a message and I said, listen, like, I have questions and I feel like you guys are not listening to me. And I remember that same day, I was sitting in the parking lot of where my OBGYN was. And it must have been either before or after my appointment with her that I met with her in the car. And oh, what it was that when I went to my OBGYN appointment to follow up, she also did another test to check inside my uterus, and she found fibroids. Now, this is a problem. If you if I paid for a test to get a more in-depth, more intrusive test, and you sat here and you told me that you didn't find anything, why is my OBGYN telling me that she found fibroids? You guys are the specialists, are you not? And this is where I got pissed. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting here in the car and I'm telling her, like, listen, you guys are the specialists. You guys literally, that's the title, specialist. You guys specialize into reproductive services. How is it that my OBGYN found fibroids in my uterus when you guys did somewhat the same exact test? And you know what she told me, y'all? She said, I did my job and I can guarantee that I'm doing my job. A moment of silence. Da 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 da. What do you mean you did your job? Because somebody else found something that you were supposed to find. Linda. Yeah. Yeah. And right then and there, I was like, I'm not going back. Absolutely not. And come to find out, I think it was like a few weeks later, I you still get messages from the team since you are like a subscribed, they take your email, whatever, and when they need to send out blast emails, like you're still part of the wave of the blast or the pool of the blast. I found out that she was going on maternity leave. I cannot begin to tell you how frustrated I was receiving that message. And not because I was jealous or envious of the fact that, you know, she's about to be a mom, but more so the fact that she sat here and she told me straight up that she didn't do anything wrong, that she did her job, and then she goes out on maternity leave. Like what a like it was just like a slap in the face. Like how how are you not considering my feelings and then you go out on maternity leave? Like again, and this is a I want to make this clear to you guys. I was not jealous or envious of her getting pregnant or having a baby. It was just that at the same time, she sat here and disregarded my concerns, disregarded my questions, and basically flat out told me, like, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm the doctor, and I did what I did. And then, boom, she goes on maternity leave to have her baby while I am struggling to even ovulate. That's where the correlation comes. I want to say that at that time it was around March, I believe, March 2023. It was around March 2023 I hit a breaking point. I hit a breaking point because at the same time, I was also dealing with the center. They're talking to me about IVF. They're telling me that the insurance denied an IUI cycle, which an IUI cycle is intrauterine insemination. So basically, what it is that they take your partner's sperm, they do a sperm wash. They don't actually wash the sperm, it's just a term that they use when they separate any impurities from the sample, and they only leave pure good sperm. And then within other treatments like ovulation induction or whatnot, they call you in and they inseminate you with a little catheter. They put the sperm to the source. That's what intrauterine insemination is. And it's way cheaper than IVF. And at that time, they're telling me, well, your insurance denied your IUI cycle, but you are approved for IVF. So I felt like they're trying to, number one, play me, because how are you going to sit here and you're going to deny my IUI cycle, which is thousands and thousands of dollars cheaper than IVF, but then you're going to sit here knowing that I have very low resources, very few resources, and you're going to try to sit here and telling me, well, yeah, we can start with IVF. You know how much they quoted me for an IVF cycle? I'm going to need y'all to just, get comfortable here. At that time, March 2023, they quoted me to like the cheapest part of IVF, $16,000. I'm gonna let you sit with that. 16,000 16 dash 000. That was what they quoted me for an IVF cycle. So at this point, I hit a breaking point, and I remember, like, I just fell to my knees and I just started bawling. I started bawling. I was telling them on the phone, like, there's no way that you guys cannot help me. Like, there's no way that you guys are sitting here telling me that there's nothing that we can do, that the only way to do this is IVF, and I would have to find 16 grand to put down, or at least half of that, which was, I want to say, like 8,000, to begin a cycle to be able to have a child. So I'm here bawling my eyes out. For the first time, I do want to say that at this moment, like, I was very, very mad with God. Very mad with God. I was. demanding answers, and I was asking him, like, how, why me? I had already been through so many experiences in life, so many things that I was not supposed to be going through at the age that I was, with the abusive relationship, the toxic family members, toxic friends. Like, I was at a point in my life where I was just like, but why? Like, what could I've done so bad on this planet that you are literally putting me into this season where you're basically telling me, like, no, you're not going to have a kid? When my biggest dream, my biggest desire was to be able to have a child of my own. It was my breaking point. I cried, um and I became very depressed. Very, very, very depressed. I told God, I was like, God, if this isn't meant for me, if you don't want me to be a mom, take this desire away from my heart. Take this away from me, because it was just too much for me to handle. Too much for me to handle. I couldn't live another day just thinking about, wow, like, I'm never going to be a mom. Never. And I know that somewhere out there, one of you guys, or many of you guys, have sat there, especially going through infertility and trying to conceive. I know that you guys have felt the same way that I have. I know that that feeling of, wow, I'm never going to become a parent. When is it going to be my turn? Has sat with you and literally smacked you in the face, because that's exactly what it did to me. It was such a humbling moment of, we are still human. Like, yes, we walk by faith and not by sight, but it was just a humbling moment where, we are still going to go through tribulations. We are still going to, just because in the word it says, weapons are not going to prosper, that does not mean they're not going to form. So I want to make sure that you guys understand me when I say this. Just because God defeated the weapons that formed, that does not mean that they're not going to form. They're more certainly going to form in every way. And the enemy always attacks you with what you really desire. And for me, it was motherhood. So he attacked my mental health. He made me believe that I was not worthy enough to be able to have a child. And he made everything around me remind me that you're not a mom. You're not going to be able to be a mom. You're not worthy to be a mom. And because the enemy was exploiting my weakness and my sadness, and the just like the place I was in, with, like, being depressed and stuff like that, he made me sit around and dwell every single day with these feelings, like battle with these feelings of feeling unworthy, feeling not good enough. And then on top of that, everybody around me was getting pregnant. Oh my goodness. I remember that during this time, like, it was just one after another. Pregnant, 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 pregnant. Everywhere. It was just like, every for every four women that I saw, whether it be on social media or just people around me, like, three of them were pregnant, announcing gender reveals, announcing baby so and so for years so and so. Like, it was very much in my face. And I had to smile through it. I really did. I mean, I had to be there. I had to celebrate. I just kind of had to sit with this and battle through it. And I don't want to make it seem like at that time that I was, again, envious or jealous that anybody around me who was around me at that time was getting pregnant. No, because that would never be me. I'm not a person that is jealous or envious of other people's accomplishments. That can never be me. That is not me. That is not me. I could be a little upset, but I would never, never hate nobody's accomplishments, nobody's successes. Because when it's my turn, I want to have genuine people around me too. But at that moment, it was hard. It was hard. I felt that every time that I had to smile my way through things and just be happy and just celebrate, um, I felt, quite frankly, like shit. I had to smile through it. I really did. And you know, forcing yourself to be able to live in a emotion that you don't feel is something hard. It's something very, very hard. And while I was grateful and while I was genuinely happy, a part of me wasn't. And I'm going to be so honest with you. A part of me wasn't. It was just like every time I saw a pregnancy announcement, every time that I saw a gender reveal, every time that I saw a birth story, it kind of was like a stab in my chest. A stab in my chest. Because it's like, wow, like I would give anything to be able to experience that feeling, to be able to be the one that is going out celebrating pregnancy, my first positive, my big fat positive, like, and knowing that at that time, because I sincerely believe this, knowing that at that time that it would not happen for me. I mean, you could only imagine that can do to a person. You kind of view yourself as less than that person, as just less of a person. That's what you view yourself as. And that's what I view myself as. And a lot of people didn't know this. Like, I was struggling. I mean, behind the scenes, I was trying my hardest to be there for the people that I had around me who were celebrating these news. But I was also going back home and hopping in the shower and just crying and just crying. Because how do you sit here as somebody who always celebrates the successes and accomplishment of others, regardless of what it is? How do you sit here and be honest and real with yourself and say, I don't really feel like celebrating anymore? How do you come to terms with that as somebody who, you know, is so used to being grateful, so used to celebrating others? How do you get out of that? That was was very much a mind and heart battle, and also a spiritual battle that I was going through. And that's not to say that, yes, I was going through all those emotions, but there's also a huge sense of loneliness that comes with that. I mean, I had my partner, I have my partner still, and I thank God for him every day, you know. But during that time, I felt alone. I felt completely alone. I felt like nobody understood. I felt like I was trapped in shame, in fear, in guilt. I'm kind of reminiscing that moment now, and it's just, you can sit and lie down next to the person that you're with, and it is such a gut-wrenching feeling to feel that you're the only person in this world that can't get pregnant. And I know that, for a lot of you, you're like, oh, well, that's not necessarily true. No, you're not going to understand until you're in that situation. I had my husband laying down next to me, loving on me, supporting me, because he has always supported me since day one. He walked through that journey with me, and he tried his very best to get me out of that bubble I was in. But I'm telling you, like, how do you combat feelings of feeling like you're the only person in this world that can't conceive? How do you get through that? I mean, those are some very dark feelings. It was a very dark time for me. And even though I showed up as myself, as my happy self, as my celebratory self, I mean, behind the scenes, I was battling a very, very dark season. And that's the truth. Also adding to the feeling of, being the only woman in the world that can't get pregnant, I was also battling the feeling of failing my husband. I mean, he had no kids. Well, now he has one. But at that time he had no kids. Um and as every month went by, I kept asking myself, what if I can't give him a child? Does he secretly wish to be with somebody else who is able to give him a child? Because this was also a desire for him. There was nothing more he wanted than to be a father. And I mean, he wasn't getting any younger. So every day, constantly, day and night, these were questions that were running through my head. What if he wants to be with somebody else? What if he leaves me to be with a person who's able to provide what I can't give to him, which was a child at that time? You know, what if I'm the reason he never becomes a father? Because what if he does decide to stay with me? But what would our life look like not being able to grant him this desire of carrying his child, giving him a child? Those are as women, we tend to most of the time protect those around you even while you're still bleeding. So not only was bleeding out myself, but I was also trying to protect him and his feelings. So it was very much a like I thinking about it now, like I really didn't recognize myself because it was such a dark moment for me. It was such a shameful moment for me. I think that at that moment I went really quiet. Like it affected me a lot. A lot. I would have to say that out of all the moments in my life, I think that that's where I really hit rock bottom. Yeah, that was my rock bottom. As I hit rock bottom, um, I was also the strong friend. I've always been that person. I was always seen as that person, as that strong friend, the strong coworker, the strong sister, the strong wife, the strong daughter. Um, so I couldn't maintain I couldn't maintain that. I couldn't maintain that. I really couldn't. I mean, I guess that I tried as best as I possibly could at that time, but I couldn't maintain that. Yes, I used to talk to my close friends about what I was going through, definitely, but even they couldn't grasp the level of like darkness that I was going through. Because again, you're never going to understand what somebody's going through. Like it's it's easier said than done. Like you're never going to understand what someone's going through and the level and the magnitude of what they're going through unless you're put in the same exact situation, or not even you're put into a situation that affects you the same way that it affects that person. You're never going to understand until you are in their shoes. Then it got to a point where it was affecting my work. I remember that at this time I was working at the American Red Cross, and weekly we would have a meeting with our district manager, Kim. I love you so much. Um, and I remember walking into her office one day, and I was trying my best to not show that there was something wrong with me or going on with me. But the minute that I sat down in that chair and she looked at me, she asked me, "What is going on?" And I remember I just got so teary-eyed. I don't remember if I cried. I probably did, but that's how bad I was. That's how infertility affected me. Like down all the way to my work. Like I could not function, I could not think. It was so like the feelings were so I was so overtaken with the feelings that it was affecting me in my job. I couldn't remember if I took some time off or not. Again, this was quite a while ago, but it was bad. So I made the decision. I made a decision. I was like, I can't continue to live like this. I can't continue to function like this. Like it's affecting my eating, it's affecting my sleep, it's affecting my mental health, it's affecting my job. So that same around that same time, I stopped. I remember coming home from work and I said to myself, I'm done. I'm done. And while I was saying that, there was still a side of me that was like, no, you're not done. Like, keep going. Like, keep trying, keep trying. But I couldn't. I couldn't keep trying. I was done. No more testing, no more pills, no more medication, no more talk about pregnancy. I kneeled down and I told God, I said, I am releasing this. Let it be your word and not mine. And that same day, I vowed to myself that I was going to work on pulling myself out of that hole that I was in, because had I not stopped, I don't know if I would have made it, honestly. And I'm not talking about what I'd, I'm not going to say the word, but I'm not talking about that. But in as far as my mental health, I don't think that I would have ever got out of that, honestly. And I'm a person who is very self-aware. I do a lot of self-reflection. So for at that moment for me, I was like, no, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep treading on like this and losing so much time, losing myself over something I have no control of. And again, at this time, I'm also getting into my faith. We have an apostle. Her name is Apostle Janine Davis. I love you. She's such a stronghold in my life. And at this time, she was helping us navigate through this situation and just telling us, like, listen, you have to be able to put your trust in God. Because essentially, what I was doing is I was prolonging the process. Obviously, I didn't realize that at that moment because, again, I was in my feelings. I was, in this dark hole. But she just kept telling me, it's going to happen. If you truly believe it in your heart, it's going to happen. Matter of fact, it's already done. It's on its way to you. But the more that you continue to doubt God's word and continue to not believe into what he has already written, the longer it's going to take for that to catch up with you. And that's something that I literally had to learn during that season. I could not sit here and be a hypocrite and say, yes, I love God. Yes, I'm all off for God. God this, God that, while having feelings of the ones that I had. Like, no, this is never going to happen. This is because if God puts a desire in your heart and it's something that you genuinely want with every fiber of your being, God is not going to overlook that. He will never overlook that. If he said that, yes, I'm going to do it, it doesn't matter if it's today, if it's tomorrow, if it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, he is going to do it. God is a man of his word and he will never fail. Basically, what I was doing, I was praising God, worshiping God in this moment, but I was doing it hypocritically. Because while I was praising God, while I was worshiping God, I was also doubting that I will ever become a mom. Basically, I was taking away the authority of God. I was essentially sitting down in his face saying, "You don't have enough power to do this. You're not God." That's what I was doing. And this may come to a surprise for a lot of you guys because you don't really think of it like that because again, God validates our feelings. I'm not saying that you have to be this perfect holy person and your faith has to be at 100% all the time. No, that's not what I'm saying. It takes a very, very, very mentally and spiritually strong person to be able to float above feelings like the ones that I was going through. It has to be a choice to walk by faith and not by sight. You don't just wake up and say, "Oh, well, no, it's a choice." And at that moment, I chose God. I didn't choose myself. And that is something that society now more than ever struggles with. You are basically fighting your flesh. You're fighting your flesh versus fighting what the kingdom already has written, what the kingdom already has over you. And at that time, I was fighting my flesh and I felt myself losing. And I made the choice to trust God. I said to myself, I'm not going to keep giving the enemy what he wants. Because again, like I said earlier, the enemy always looks for a way into your life. When he knows that you have a higher calling, a higher purpose, he always tries to find himself into your life. And he always attacks you on what you love the most. He will never attack you on something you don't care about. He will always attack you on what you care the most. If what you care for the most and what you're worrying about is your finances, he's always going to attack your finances. If what you care for and you worry for is being a mom, he attacks you through infertility. He attacks you through your child. He is never going to attack you somewhere that you do not care about. It's always something that you care about and that he knows that once you lock in with God, it's going to happen. And that's what happened with me. So what did I do? I chose God. And I said, I'm giving this to you, God. Let it be your will and not mine. I'm handing it over. I leave everything at your feet. You do what you want to do with this. And I let go and let God. Little did I know that God was working behind the scenes because I'm telling you, this man, hey, this man, my God, my God, my God. Something about the name Jesus. Little did I know that he was working behind the scenes. Now, January 2024, that's where the real shift begins. Um, I had, like I mentioned earlier, I had fibroids from, the previous diagnosis at the center, and I got them removed again, Dr. Dingra. Um, I didn't expect anything because, like I said, I had surrendered everything that I had to God's hands. So, they removed the fibroids. I wasn't expecting anything. It was just another routine thing that was happening for me. I was, working on getting my mental health in check, prioritizing my mental health, making sure I was healthy, making sure, that I was functioning at my job, that I was functioning in the household. So I really didn't think nothing of it. Then a month later, February, March of 2024, I got a little push. hmm Something pushed me. God pushed me. And he basically whispered into my ear, try again. That's what he said. Try again. Mm, and at first I was like, months have gone by. I think I did pretty well making sure that, I was repairing myself mentally and physically. I don't know if I want to try again. And I think that those feelings were coming from a place of fear, a place of I don't want to disappoint God. I don't want to, start something for it to end up not being the result that I want. I don't want to get my hopes up. But again, when God tells you to move, you move. And that's exactly what I did. I was looking for different centers because I obviously didn't want to go to the one I was at. That was a big no no for me. So I remember I was looking on the internet, fertility centers nearby, and I came across one that it really caught my attention. And this particular center, it was very far from where I was living. So I was living in Bristol, Connecticut, and the center had locations. I believe it was in Danbury, Connecticut, Norwich, Connecticut, and Norwalk. I might be wrong because, again, you know, I don't really remember where they were. Um, However, I was looking at the center and I'm like, they're pretty far. But again, when God places something in your heart, you just have to go with it. So I went with my gut, my intuition. God was telling me pick that one. So I scheduled a consultation, and from Bristol to Danbury is like an hour drive. Yeah, because Danbury is going towards New York and Bristol is basically coming down towards like if you're coming back to Massachusetts. So it was a ways worth of a trip, and I went. I went. That very first appointment, that consultation, I remember it's like this huge building. I believe it's the Danbury location. I might be wrong, guys. I don't know. But I remember it's a big building, was on the second floor. I walked in through the doors, and immediately as I walk in, I got this sense of warmness. Like it was just like something came over me. I just felt so welcome in that center. Like the first person I saw was the lady sitting at front. I remember she was wearing a headset. And I just saw the biggest smile. The biggest smile. I go in, I check in, I sit. They have like, the little coffee bar or whatever. They have a little table where they have, infertility information. And the waiting wasn't like any other. I remember that for the last center, I was very anxious. But for this one, I was actually pretty calm. I was pretty calm. I was calm. I was excited. Same time, I was nervous. There was a lot of emotions running through, but my first like experience coming into the center, which is called Illum Fertility, I remember walking into Illum and I was like, this is it. This is the center. I knew it was the right center because right from the moment that I walked in, I just felt a sense of peace. And I felt like I was welcome. Like I nobody really had to tell me anything, or I didn't necessarily know anybody, but I felt like it was a open space for me, as if they were waiting for me sort of. So right then and there I just knew like no, like, this is it. This is where God is going to, you know, come in form of Dr. Sean Williams, who is the doctor who ultimately helped us have or conceive our baby boy. So, I remember a nurse came out. She walked me into the room where the doctor was, where Dr. Sean Williams was. And I remember him, he sat down on the other side of the table that there was. It was like a huge table there. Um, and basically, it was just me and him sitting, and he was just asking me questions, kind of going over the notes and stuff like that. And just having a conversation with me. And I noticed that as I was explaining to him, what was going on, what I wanted to do, and my experience at the other centers, he was just very quiet, taking notes on a piece of paper. And once I was finished, he kind of took a moment, like a moment of silence to himself. And he looked at me, and these are some words that I'm never going to forget in my entire life. He looked at me and he literally said, "I'm going to get you pregnant." And I would say that I have not felt so sure of the work that he was going to do in a very long time. Like, I had a sense of trust in him. And I think that I have not felt that in a long time, especially going through all these different people, getting a second opinion, and then the experience that I went through at the other center. I hadn't felt like somebody was really sure that they were going to get stuff done until I met Dr. Sean Williams. So in that moment where I realized, like, okay, I can kind of put my guard down here, he knows what he's talking about. I also met the other staff. They were so beautiful, so great. They were absolutely God sent. It was just all hands on deck. I mean, we started with I believe it was the same treatment which I was with Dr. Dinger in the past. So we did do ovulation induction, and we did the pills as well. So we did a combination of pills and stuff like that. And then it ultimately led to the trigger shot, which is the ACG shot. So basically, a trigger shot or HCG shot, what it is the pregnancy hormone. So what happens is, when you're going through these fertility treatments, especially if you're doing ovulation induction, they give you kind of like a push so that your follicles can mature and rupture. And that's exactly what I needed. So the pregnancy hormone that they inject, it helps your follicles mature and rupture. So the HCG shots, if I'm saying that right, is the basically the pregnancy hormone. They inject that so they can help your follicles mature and rupture. And then, whether it be intrauterine insemination, which was what I did, or if they do IVF or anything else, that's, one of the steps that they use to be able to continue in the fertility treatment. So they call it the trigger shot. So I got a trigger shot later after that. But anyways, going back to that, we started the cycle right away with the pills and stuff like that. I was going in every 2 to 3 days to get a monitor appointment to make sure that the follicle was growing and everything was looking great. I was so happy. Everybody was happy. Everything was moving along how it was supposed to. And then I think it was probably like a week later that I started my fertility treatment with him. He checked my follicles, and I remember this moment like any other moment. And basically what happened was, your follicle has to grow to a certain size in centimeters for it to be considered ready to rupture, like a good follicle. And I had a couple follicles that were growing, that were maturing, that were doing everything that they were supposed to do. However, when I got to that last monitor appointment, the follicle did not continue to grow. And for someone like me who has been in other cycles or other fertility cycles, I already know what that meant. I already knew what the follicle not growing meant. I knew what was coming next. So essentially, what happens is, if the follicle stops growing or doesn't continue to grow, that's it. That follicle is no longer viable. Then you get your period, then you have to start again the next month, start the whole process over again the next month. So once Dr. Williams looked at the screen and saw that the follicle wasn't necessarily growing to its size, he said, the follicle isn't growing. This could be a problem. I remember I just went numb. I didn't really think about anything. I really didn't have like an expression. I became very quiet because as much as I try to not hype myself up, I kind of did in a way because again, it God is telling me to continue. So if God is telling me to keep going, it's because something good is gonna come out of this. And now I'm receiving, I wouldn't say horrible news, but concerning news that could lead to bad news. And for those women who have been in between numerous fertility cycles, you know how much it takes out of you mentally and physically because you are getting pumped with hormones. So you're not only feeling like ish, but also like you're thinking like, oh my God, I have to redo this again. Like I have to start again and it takes longer and longer. So those were the thoughts that at the end were running through my head. But then something great happened after that. And it was that he suggested that I continue the medication at a higher dose, which is to me is a little weird. It was my first time because usually when the follicles weren't growing, it was like, okay, you stop the medication, that was it. You get your period, if I got a period, and then you start again. But he suggested that in the middle of that, he was going to give me more medication to see if the follicle responded to the higher dosage. Well, he was right. He gave me more medication. The follicle grew to to the size that he wanted it to grow. And after that, I mean, it might have been the first week of June, and not if I'm not mistaken, but I triggered because I remember very vividly that I triggered at one of my aunt's parties in the summer. Yeah. Yep. At 7 p.m. at night. I don't know how I remember that, but I do. But I triggered at one of my aunt's parties. And, since we were in the process of like trying to come back to Mass, trying to get a job over here and stuff like that, it was during a very chaotic time. So, you know, but I also do want to add to that during the month of March, my husband and I, we did go into an Esther's fast. And Esther's fast, I don't want to misquote anything, so I do recommend you guys to look it up. But what we did was we went 72 hours without eating anything or drinking anything. So 3 days, nothing. It might sound a little crazy, but I needed a way to talk to God in the closest way possible. Not just in prayer, not just in worship. Like I needed confirmation, clarification on a lot of things. Number one, about the move. Number two, about the jobs. Number three, about, the possibility of having a baby and just a lot of other goals that I had envisioned for myself in my lifetime. So we started on a Tuesday. I don't know the exact dates. I just know it was a Tuesday. And I remember that I had texted my friends and I had said, hey, I'm not going to be responsive for the next 3 days. I have to disconnect myself for 72 hours just, to get some answers and stuff like that. And after that, I closed down my social media. I closed everything. I closed Facebook. I closed Instagram. I closed Snapchat. The only thing that I had was TikTok. And that was basically just for, to look up information about the fast and other people who did the fast. So day one, the fast started. It wasn't nothing to it. 24 hours without eating. The second day was hard. I was hitting 32 hours without having nothing in my stomach, no food, no water. So my body was getting weak. I was getting very dizzy. And there was just a lot of stuff going on. Like right around this time, like I had a fallout with some people. So it was a very, very, very chaotic time for me. And hence why I closed down social media and all that stuff. Like I just needed to disconnect from the world. And the second day, I do remember that I was home and I was worshiping. I was worshiping, I was rocking back and forth, praising, singing, talking to God. And I remember that during that moment, I had a beautiful experience. It was one of the best experiences, and I still remember it to this day very vividly. And what happened was, as I was rocking back and forth, worshiping and talking to God, I it wasn't my imagination. I know that for sure, but I kind of see from my right side, I see this hand. It was like a huge, 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 huge hand. And it was sort of like a plump hand. And the only thing I saw was, you see how I'm wearing my like sweatshirt and then it's from the cuff down to the hands? That's what I basically saw. So essentially what I saw was a man's hand, as if that person was wearing a robe. So it was, a nice beautiful robe and then a big plump hand. And it kind of had this glow to it, like a yellowish, like I can't even explain the color to you. It was such a beautiful glow to it, like a nice highlighted glow, like golden. It was so beautiful. And as I see this hand coming into the frame of my peripheral vision, I felt as if this hand gave me a hug. And it was honestly like the best, the most warm, the most love filled hug that I have ever received in my entire lifetime. At that moment, I just start bawling. I just start crying because I knew right then and there that it was God. And I'm not sure if you guys have ever had an experience with God, with the Holy Spirit, but I felt I never wanted to leave that moment. It was such a surreal presence. It was so much full of love, full of comfortable, full of like, like nothing mattered at that moment than for me to be in his presence. And I knew exactly where I was. I was in God's presence, you know? And, as I'm receiving this warm hug, the frame changes to like my husband, a little baby, me, and then another little baby. So there was two kids in the frame. And I was dressed in like a business corporate attire. My husband was also dressed up. My kids were dressed up as if we were going to like an event. And I remember that I was kind of like in like an office space or like a reception area. The floors were granite, like a white granite with like golds flakes, I would say, or swirls. And then after that, it's just me walking with these kids. And then it changes again, the frame, into me standing on the street looking at a house. And this house, it was so beautiful. It was like one of these modern new houses that they're building. Very modern, very clean, very sleek, very, very nice house. And the house was gray with a red door in the front. And it had a wraparound porch. And then the grass is like, when you go to those nice neighborhoods that, they got the nice grass that you can't even sniff around there or breathe around there because you're scared that it might mess up the grass. Yeah, you know exactly what type of grass I'm talking about. But that was the grass that was around it. And it had like, I mean, I'm talking about acres of land and beautiful, beautiful green grass. And then as I'm in that frame, in that moment, I can see that there's a little girl and there's a little boy. So the two kids that I was telling you about earlier, it was a little girl and it was a little boy. And I just remember feeling so, so happy, so, so grateful. And then after that, like, I guess that I came to myself at that moment. And I just remember just looking around because I was by myself. My husband hadn't got home yet. I was by myself and there was worship music in the background. And I just remember just like saying, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God." At that moment, I knew that what I had seen was God's confirmation for me. God's confirmation that yes, it's going to happen. Yes to everything that I've always felt in my heart. A yes, that's all it was. And at that moment, I knew, like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Everything's going to be okay. It's not going to be easy, but everything that I desire in my heart, God said yes to it already. And it's already done because we got to speak as if it's already done because it is. So I finished the fast. And this is where the second confirmation comes in. So for those who don't believe in God and who think that God is not real, listen to this. Listen to this. So after we finished the fast, I remember it was a Thursday, right around maybe 5 o'clock p.m. or 5:30 p.m. Um, my husband and I, we had applied to jobs to be able to come over here. We had applied to an apartment that we didn't hear back from as well. So we were in the waiting status for everything. And I remember we were driving to, it was actually to the Chinese buffet. And it must have been either before or after. I can't remember. But we were in the car and we were so excited because it was before. We were so excited because like, oh my God, we haven't eaten in 3 days. What are we gonna eat first? That's what was going on. And I remember that he got a phone call. And before he picked up the phone call, I said, "Louis, that's your job. That's the job. You got the job." I just said it to say it. I didn't know that it was actually the job or anything. I just blurted out. When he picks up the phone, it's the job. Letting him know that congratulations, you got the job. Your start date is June 17th. I was like, "Oh my God, no way." And I would have to say that maybe 15 minutes later, once we start getting closer to the buffet, because it was about a 30-minute drive, I got a call from my now manager telling me that I also got my job and that my start date was June 18th. And to put the cherry on top, guys, that same week, we got an email saying that we had gotten the apartment. So that meant that we were coming back to Mass. I don't know what else to tell you, but right there, that's right there, that little piece right there, that's a testimony. Just that right there. Just that right there. Because when God says that he's gonna do it and you believe in your heart that he's gonna do it, he's gonna do it. Even for the people that don't believe, he's gonna do it just to show you who he is. You feel what I'm saying? So not only did we get confirmation once, not only twice, but we got 3 times confirmation, all within a span of maybe a week. Within that, I'm still doing the fertility treatments. Once we get approvals for everything, we already have a date when we're going to move. So the date that we had chosen to come and move was June 14th. So, we triggered. I spoke to the doctors. I spoke to the center and I said, "Hey, We're moving out of state. We want to thank you for everything. We got everything ready. He literally we did the IUI examination, and he sent us on our merry way. He said, "Good luck. I hope everything, turns out in your favor." And that was it. Fast forward to June 14th, we're packing up our stuff, babe. Like, we are taking everything out of the apartment, everything, because we had to start work in a few days. We got everything into the U-Haul. We drove back to Massachusetts, set up the whole apartment literally in a day. In a day. So then, one thing that the fertility center had told us was that, the waiting period of when you should be able to test to see if you're pregnant. Mind you, I had the trigger shot in my system, which is the pregnancy hormone. So if I tested before the date that they had given me to do a blood test, it could potentially be a false positive or a false negative. So that's why they gave me the date that they gave me, which was June 24th, to test. But you know, June 19th comes around and I'm feeling a little bit weird. I'm feeling a little bit weird. Like, physically, I'm feeling a little bit weird. But I didn't think nothing of it. I was just like, okay, well, it might be PMS. PMS is premenstrual syndrome. So, symptoms of a period before you actually get your period. So I'm like, oh, I was feeling a little bummed out because I had felt those symptoms before, and it was always a period. So, but I got curious, y'all. I got curious. I got curious. So after work, I bought a pregnancy test. Yeah, I know. I know what you're saying. I know. I know. I know. But I got curious. So I bought a pack of, I would say, like maybe two or three. I think that's what, and it was the analog one, the one with the lines. And I bought the test. And I remember that after I came out of work, I went and I took the test. Guys, I took the test and, I waited the 3 minutes or whatever. And when I went to check the test, I honestly thought that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Yeah. Yeah. I looked at it, I stared at it, I put it under the light, I put the flashlight under it. I took a picture of it, and I adjusted it because I was seeing two lines. I was seeing two lines. I was like, mind you, I've never had a positive pregnancy test. Like, even if it was the trigger shot, like, I was like, oh my God, like, this is the feeling. So immediately I call my homegirl. I'm like, girl, you need to bring me a digital test because something's wrong here. Something's wrong. She's like, vroom, vroom, hurrying to my house to bring me a digital pregnancy test. So she comes in, she's sitting on the toilet. She's just as nervous as me. So she's laughing. Every time she gets nervous, she laughs. So I'm laughing. And I go, I take the test. We wait because them digital tests, baby, they would have you in a chokehold. It's like getting an oil change. You're waiting for hours for that digital test to finish loading. Yeah. So I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. We're over here talking, making jokes like, oh my God, what if it is, positive or whatever? And then, we waited a good like 10 minutes and I flipped the test over. Girl, the test said pregnant. And we just start dying laughing because it's like, I think it was more so that I was nervous. So I didn't know what to do. And I'm like shaking, I'm dark skinned. I turned white. Like, it was, I don't even know how to explain it. It was something. And again, I didn't want to get my hopes up high because I was supposed to test on June 24th and I was testing early. So at that time, I was like, no, like, let's chill. I'm going to test again tomorrow Because essentially, if the test, every time you tested, if the line was getting darker, baby, that's a real pregnancy. That is not the trigger shot anymore. Because if it was the trigger shot, it would be getting lighter, meaning that the shot is getting out of your system. I tested the next day in the morning. The line was darker. Yeah. And I still didn't believe it because I tested the next day too. And it was darker than the first 2 days. Yeah. And I still didn't believe it. So I waited till the 24th, which is a couple days later. I get out of work, I go and get the blood test done. And you know that Quest, they take forever to upload results. It takes like, I would say like probably 2 or 3 days for the results to come back. Baby, I got my results the same day. Talk about confirmation for me. When I got the results, I went into my phone and I don't know what I was doing. I think I was here at my house or I don't really remember. But I opened on my phone and I went into the Quest app and all I saw was HCG quantitative positive. Man, I've never called my husband so quick in my entire life. And mind you, I had this whole plan that if I was pregnant, I was gonna get a little box with the little onesie and the little pregnancy test in it. No, baby, I called. I was like, babe, we're pregnant. Yeah, we are pregnant. And then from there, the rest was history. I mean, I did not open up my social media. I didn't post it anywhere. You know, I told a couple friends, like my close circle, that I was pregnant and everybody was so happy. But I wanted to keep it between my private circle because, yes, I was pregnant, but then here comes the fear of losing it. And I think that the fear for me was posting it really early and then giving it the possibility of having like a miscarriage and then having to face society and let them know, like, this is what I dreamed of and now I lost it. So I refrained from posting it. I didn't open up my social media, but I was like, you know what? Let's do something special. So we contacted our photographer, which is Waldi Studios, and we went to the beach. We shooted a video at the beach for the pregnancy announcement and also the gender because we couldn't wait. So we canceled the gender reveal because we couldn't wait. And between Waldy and Davey, who was the also one of the videographers at that moment, and then my best friends, we all were there at the beach shooting the video and stuff like that. And on September 16th, 2024, on my 25th birthday, I reopened my social media, and that's what I led with the pregnancy announcement and with the gender of our baby boy. Fast forward to February of 2025, February 27th, 2025, our perfect baby boy was born, weighing 7 pounds and 14 ounces. And, the rest was history. I mean, he's about to be 1 years old next month. So, a year has gone by where it's just absolutely shocking that I went through all that. And then kind of now putting like in retrospect, like it was just all God. All God. Like our son is the evidence of God. Like this was all God. Like, yes, I had to give credit to Illum Fertility and to Dr. Dingra, and to my support system. However, this was God. God had placed authority over those people, over those doctors to be able to make this miracle happen, because a lot of people have this sense that, you know, oh, only God is going to do it. Yes, only God is going to do it. But also, God puts his hands over certain medical professionals so that his word could be manifested through them too. And that's exactly what he did with me. I needed an extra push, you know? Because if it was for him, he would have just came down himself and planted that seed like he did with Mary, you know? But he put his hands over those medical professionals and they did his work through me. So that was God. That was all God. And I named my son Abriel, after his father, because his father is Gabriel. That's his second name. And his middle name is Zaire. Zaire in Arabic is the evidence, because he is evidence that God is real, that God is God, you know? And I could have not been any more grateful than what I am at this moment for just the simple fact that, number one, I was able to give my husband a child. I was able to bring life into this world, because bringing life into this world, like, yes, you carry it, but going through the actual action of bringing life physically into this world, that is a experience that I wish for every mother to have, or every woman longing to be a mother to have. That is one of the most purest, most scariest times that you will go through in your life. And it's one of the most sacred, to say the least. To that end, I just I wanted to share my testimony, because I want for that woman who's watching, who is trying to conceive, who hasn't been successful conceiving, who has been going through the difficulties of infertility. I want to speak directly to you. I want to tell you that, my son is a breathing miracle. My son is proof that God's silence is not his absence, and that God's delay is not denial. You know, including me, a lot of us think that when God is silent, that he is not working on our behalf, that he has forgot about us, that he, you know, removed us, or that he just doesn't like us. But I want to give you this analogy. When you are in school taking a test, the teacher is usually silent. Yeah? Yeah. The teacher's usually silent. You will never hear the teacher giving out the answers. You will never hear the teacher giving you guidance. You will get a wink here and there, just like, oh, hey, you're doing well, just confirmation here and there. But the teacher's never going to tell you how you're doing in the test. They tell you afterwards when they're grading the test. And they also grade the test in silence. That doesn't mean that the teacher's not doing anything. It just means that, they're doing it in silence. And that's exactly how God operates. He does it in silence. So with that being said, um, I want to tell you that you're not alone. I know that infertility and going through hormonal imbalances it sucks. And like me, that time frame, I know it feels like nobody in this world can understand you. I know it feels like you don't have anybody to relate the pain to, because only you yourself know what you're going through. However, you're not alone. I was there. I was you. I was you. I know what it feels like to have or to miss something that you have never had. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to miss something that you've never had, you know? So I want to encourage you to, I know it's hard. I know it really is, but I want to encourage you to just kind of lean more into your faith, lean more into God, because I am glad that God made me wait. I was not ready to be a mom when I asked to be a mom. I was not ready. There was a lot of things that needed to be removed. There was a lot of things that needed to be rearranged. And there was a lot of things that needed to be replanted in my soil in order for me to have the best foundation possible so that my son can make his entrance into the world. Um, I lost a lot of friendships that I thought were genuine, but they were not. And I'm not mad over it. It is what it is. Not everybody can go with you into the next chapter. So while you're in this season of waiting, of longing, of wanting, of hoping, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. God will come on time at the right time, not a minute more, not a minute less. So this concludes our season 1, episode 1, The Journey to Motherhood. I hope that I was able to relate to what you're going through. And again, we are here for you. I'm here for you. God is here for you. And I pray that God takes care of your heart, that God takes care of your mental health, and that you're able to lean into God whenever you're going through a tough time or whenever you need answers, because He is our Father, He is our best friend, and He knows. He knows exactly what you're going through. So I hope that this made you feel a little better, that you were able to smile, that you were able to at least walk away with some wisdom, with a little more power to tackle on the next day. And I hope that, that you come back, because this is home. This is your sanctuary. This is for you. I'm just here to sit next to you and talk you through it. So I love you. Take care. And I'll see you in the next episode.